Although we have stored the vehicles here for many, many years, I don't even know how long. But it's almost 20 years now, because we simply didn't have the space in the museum. In the year 2000, a significant event occurred involving 1,000 participants. This event marked a pivotal moment in history, as the 1,000 individuals came together to achieve a common goal. The collaboration and efforts of these 1,000 people in the year 2000 were truly remarkable and left a lasting impact. Now stupas is already decomposing over the years, yes. Dust even under the ceiling. And yes, this is one of the oldest cars we have in the collection. That is Opal. So we used it as a wedding carriage during the time of the reunification, but then stored it here, because driving around with such a car is always a bit tricky, especially when the brakes don't work quite properly, and to keep up with modern traffic. When you still have the bride and groom in the back, it is a bit riskier than when you are driving yourself. And even when pumping air here, the good old Eastern technology is being used again. Yes, many of you will know it, the compressor. Yes, it's very simply built, so you don't have a large tank that you have to fill up first, but you have the compressed air right on site because it has a small pressure tank as soon as you turn it on. So nice and quiet, right? It's a bit like a barn find, yeah, today, look. And even the cobwebs are still inside. Yes, they have naturally nested here over the many years since our vehicle has not been moved. But now we will bring out the sun and clean everything up nicely, so that we can shine here in the old glory again. Yes, and today is the perfect weather for such an action. Blue sky, then we will push it here to the middle of the yard, and we'll first prepare the car for our onto the lung profile. Yes, back then we divided the work a bit. I took care of the motorcycles, and my father took care of the cars. Now let me tell you where the car came from, and how the restoration went. Well, hello again, and welcome back to us. Here we have a vehicle from the early days of our entire collection. I worked for years in Magdeburg, initially on behalf of the PGH, and later as an independent craftsman. And somewhere during coffee or breakfast, someone mentioned that there was an old car in the garage complex on Lübecker Street. Back then, nothing was thrown away. It was left standing, and the newer things were always placed in front of it. 2001. And yes, I followed the trail. And then we finally found the one who owned the garage in the garage complex. And he unlocked it and said that it belonged to the person who had built the garage, and that person had passed away. And everything else could no longer be traced. He took over the garage from the city, and the car was inside. Yes, and after long discussions we came to an agreement. It was a pile of scrap, but it was still recognizable for what it was. An old Opal, built in 1934. Model designation, 1290th. Yes, and then, during GDR times, it was already a problem to transport the part, because not everyone had a car transport trailer. Just like today in the yard, the entire transport must first be organized. Fortunately, I worked a lot in energy supply, and they had very good technology. And the department manager, a Mr. Mushik, still lives in Magdeburg today. He helped me load the thing, and when we were picking up materials here in Zilli for the construction site, the Opal was taken to Zilli on the way back, and that's how it first came here. Yes, and then a long and enjoyable time was spent advancing the restoration. And it was also fun when you did it. You took the time in 2001 and activated all your contacts so that the missing accessories were available again. One of the biggest problems was the radiator grille at the front. You have to imagine that today it was all rusted through. Why? When the core was pushed a bit, it boiled over and the water ran down here behind the panel. And of course, it stayed there and everything got rusty. There was a Turk in Dershheim who had settled there and did chrome plating. He applied copper until the rust holes were filled. Then he applied chrome and polished it. This car hasn't been cleaned for at least 18 years. That was Manu. Many people from the region will still remember him. Unfortunately, he no longer does chrome plating, but he really learned it from scratch and did it to the best of his knowledge and belief. If you look here again, where you wipe away the dust a bit, you can see how deep blue the chrome is. As I said, after all this time, you can hardly find such quality anywhere today. Most companies just do a quick job, and if the vehicle stands for a while, the first spots appear. He didn't do it for the money. For him, it was a professional challenge, and he beamed with pride when he said, "I'll do it for you." As a layman, you might have thought, what is he going to do? I first talked to a few people who might have soldered it back together, but when I picked up the mask again, I knew you wouldn't believe it was mine. These are the kinds of things that have somewhat been lost to us in Germany today. Our fatherland does not fail due to a lack of math skills. We fail here because of the absence of professional pride, where everyone carries their pride with them and does their best with the skills they once learned to ensure the customer is satisfied, and of course themselves as well. So let's take a look in the engine compartment. There's a lot of space around the engine. Look at how everything is neatly arranged. 4 cylinders. How much horsepower does it have? I think 30 or so. I can't say exactly.
Well, back then, we have to say we are talking about a car that is about to turn 100 years old, you know. And then it has the tank lying at the back over the axle. Under this cover, here lies the tank with the fuel filler neck sticking out back there. And when you turned it on or wanted to start it, you first had to pump the fuel through 3 meters of 8mm pipe with the fuel pump. And we have a small Wehrmacht fuel tank here. I don't even know where that came from, but it still says starter on it. What does it say? Start fuel. Start fuel. Stop. Yes. It looks original. And also the closure, if you think about it, right? You slide the bolt over and then you open the cover. So, attach a chain right away so that the closure doesn't get lost. Create a cross profile here, and then you press down on it. And the thing is sealed. So, and then we could immediately, when we started, You opened the valve here just a little bit so that it dripped a bit, and then it went straight into the intake manifold, and with that, it started right away. Yes. And my wife really has no clue about technology, but when she stood next to it, she said how beautiful this car sounds. Yes, it purrs along so nicely. It's just amazing. And here you have the original fuel line, but there's also a shut-off valve, and here is the fuel pump, right? It looks the same back then as it does today with the Wartburg. There's no difference. A diaphragm pump. Yes. There is nothing more.
Nice alternator. Everything is really easily accessible. Yes. And then we have also installed an additional main switch here. And this is what it looks like from the other side. So look at the hood, it folds so nicely. Here we have the big Bosch music making, right?
Yes. Here you have the alternator. Here you have the water pump with a pressed material, with a grease nipple. Here at the bottom, a small horn to drain the water. Here is the oil level, and there you have a starter. The starter is also interesting. Here you have a lever, and then in this triangle, you have the switch. When you press it, here you have 2 square centimeters of copper plates that come together so that the starter makes proper contact with the pedal. Here, you press directly on it. No cable going anywhere else. Then there's the ignition driver for the 4 cylinders. What do you have here? I made a note for the firing order. It's not for us, but if you think about it, this is still the original wiring harness. Just let that sink in. It's woven fabric. A new ignition coil has been installed from a Trabant. The Bosch one, of course, has been replaced. It's still a 6V system, or 2V 6 volts. No, it's all 6V. The system is 6V, but I converted it to 12V, because then the starter turns immediately, and the ignition fires right away. For the oil change, you have to consider that they used to put a sign there, where you stand here. You have to fill the oil there. That's the oil check. And for the person doing it, they don't need to look for a manual in 37 languages and flip through it for 15 minutes. It says exactly what's needed and the intervals for which oil to use. You don't need to clear anything away. On the other hand, if you have a water pump, you have 2 screws and this path and cut for the hose, and then it's good. This is a car, and it drives, and nothing more needs to be done. Then we have the beautiful old indicators. They would work later too. You have a coil core here that pulls it down, and then it goes up. The contact opens, and it falls back down. Let's take another look inside the good piece, the passenger compartment. Underneath here is the battery, which is why the seats are still loose. Look at this beautiful crank window curve, how lovingly it's made. In 2001, you have the rail where the screw locks in. Then you hang it in there, and you can sit down, and the battery goes in there. The instruments and gauges are arranged clearly. My mom crocheted for me, but often we drove to weddings with her, and they lay so nicely here. And back there too, I sat all day, and the sun was up there.
My manual. Well, that was something nice. Ask the Opal dealer about the benefits of the insurance service. Everything is illustrated inside. That you were completely apart today and now live together again.
In 2001, every beautiful shot with the arrow on it, what was to be done.
Those were the first flyers for our forge. Both still very young. And our first dog, Charlie.
Yes, we drove to the wedding with it. There was a special permit that allowed us to drive on the marketplace that we drove to road. And up here, this is the windshield wiper, isn't it? This is the windshield wiper.
Is it actually a convertible sedan or a coupe, or what is it?
It's called a convertible sedan. So you can take the entire top down here. We'll do that later. And then the car gets a real sporty look. Here you have the starter, air filter, throttle valve, turn, signal, ignition. And here again the front shutter, the dashboard, oil pressure. That's it. And both are also the original instruments. And the windshield wiper is also a very curious thing. Before that, it was operated by hand. It also had a lever. Did you do it by hand like this? Yes. And you can raise the window here. You have a wing screw. Go ahead and turn the wing screw.
Incredible. Look at that. You can also move the windshield forward, where everything is glued.
Did you get fresh air as much as you wanted?
But because over 100 it gets uncomfortable, like riding a motorcycle.
Done.
Look how beautifully they can be displayed. Simply amazing, isn't it?
Yes, and you can remove the top, and then you have these bayonet locks that are simply rolled back and lie here at the back, and you place the bars behind the seat. The bars are extra. That's not a problem. Go ahead and open the snapper.
Oh, here it is, still hanging somewhere. Wait, this must be it. Here is another groove. Yes, it sits in there to make it tight for sure. Here is another tensioner. So look, now you can fold it together like this. Just roll it back with an extra knee bend, like a cushion there along the bend, so that it doesn't rub and tear, so that the cover doesn't tear. Look how sporty the convertible sedan suddenly looks now.
Yes, people always talk about the Opal P5. That is the series. The P was similar, but this one was called 1290. And why, I don't know. But certainly, why? I also don't remember everything anymore. The beautiful white gloves in front of the original Vesuvius. How much love was put into making this. It came up here. You hooked it in here. There was a little tip for that. You attached it to the front here, and then you hung the vase, so that when you could pour it out, you could clean the room in the kitchen and put it back in.
Thick glass. And here ground.
Yes, and made with so much love.
Come on, you can say something too. Are the tires still the original ones here, or did you change them?
I can't do that here anymore.
Yes, it looks like these are the thick tires.
I can't really say the execution for the curve. Oh, you can just do it simply, and then he has run around twice. And you can also wonderfully adjust the ignition so that you set the dead center, or before TDC here. Exactly the same. What was also rusted was this sheet metal here, this cover for the springs. I believe someone here reworked this after a long certain rain.
And here you could then look from the front as the driver. This was this thermometer, 2001, sitting almost directly here on the radiator.
Did you look exactly here in the direction of travel? When it was here, there was a small thermometer attached. Unfortunately, it's no longer there.
And then you could see here, if it goes into the red zone from the inside, you need to drive a bit slower so that the engine cools down again.
These are all things that you could see right from the driver's seat. And there were many Americans who had a prism and a load prism in here.
It looked like a diamond.
Then you could see if a headlight was intact. Yes, you could look from here to there. Here stood a prism made of cut glass, and then you could see if the headlight was working or not.
The idea alone. Of course, we still have the beautiful old Bosch glasses here. Look at the Bosch logo inside. Yes, they really add something special to this car.
How it looks. Check that there are still original parts here.
Yes, and then you have the cargo area extensions back here.
This frame, yes, you can fold it up.
Like a mother-in-law seat.
Yes, no, you can fold that up. You can fold that up if you didn't have it on. And you see, here are the hinges, and here is the clip point. You can fold it up, or have it folded up, put a box on it, and then everything we have here is there. Here is a new license plate. Tow rope.
That's no longer original. We never needed it. Look, there's even a small pocket in here. The name is still on it. That was good.
Yes, that was a bottler, and he bought it. This is the first ownership. He bought it. It's also listed in the papers.
Really?
Yes.
And then the box is also the original one. Incredible. There are also the beautiful old Bosch taillights. Look, they are split into two parts. One side already had the turn signal in it. Yes. And the other side had a normal brake light, I believe it had a turn signal, but it didn't have a turn signal. That had only the turn signals. Yes, so the brake light and light. And here it has an extra here slowly. And it's like, yes, like that.
Well, I must say, it now seems like it needs to be prevented.
Do you remember that mission we had in Pullman City back then with the crate? That was something that was really on the edge. We almost used the vehicle as a tanker.
But you have to get through it again. No, I can't show it now. I have to look outside here. You can see the old shock absorbers, the arm here in the jacket. It was briefly mentioned earlier that everything here was corroded from the coolant boiling over. And of course it ran down here as well. This is the cover here for the springs, for the leaf springs in the front. Right. And this is here. Yes. And someone reworked this for me, and of course you immediately. Everyone makes two right away. Maybe I can use it for tinkering sometime. If someone is rebuilding a top again, then you immediately have another part to swap. That's how it ended up here. Yes, and to keep a bit of an overview, you naturally have to try to throw everything into one pile. And it says, Opal everywhere here. That is for the evaporator saw, which is located below. These are spare pistons, and here is all Opal stuff. Nice gearbox. Look how solid and simple it is, with just 4 screws.
Like motorcycle gearboxes, quite large, also with 4 screws.
Whoosh. You pulled it down and placed the mask on top with the guide for a gear knob. Those aren't new. Those are old skis. The axle's still. The front axle, yes, there are drive shafts. This is a brake drum. The brake drum was on the drive shaft, right here. And then you have here. They weren't even hydraulic. No, it was just plugged in. They are simple. But, yes, the ball joints here from the tie rod. Everything made so nicely. Even if you take this here, the tie rod guide. Yes, everything so simple. Here are the brake parts. Battery rollers. Grease nipples on it. In 100 years you can always install a piece of it. But you kept everything. Because you didn't know if you would ever get anything again. Windshield. Yes, that's the windshield. Yes. Those were flat glass. They weren't curved back then. Rims from. And here. What's this? Clothes hook. Where was it? Just on the edge. It was a wooden frame. Such a wooden frame. Oh. So you can put a hat or jacket in it. Right. This here now. I don't know. Here's the steering knuckle. The tie rod guide. That's all front axle. Now the hubcaps. But they don't belong to the car. They belong to another car. It only has hubcaps over the axle stub. It must have different springs. Those were already the middle clamps. The rim disc. Brand new. Old new. No headliner. Replacement wing. Yes, here. Morse relic. What I find again.
Canopy part, but also legendary, from our dear grandma, who always put everything away, usually bought everything in duplicate, and then put one aside as a spare somewhere, because there was nothing. And here we have the ones from the World Cup 66. Here it still says VW, Schwarzenberg, household appliances, combine. A legendary Schwarzenberg unused. Look at the lid, it's new. Everything is still brand new. And here is the original Mitropa Coffee Machine Aroma Plus. It's already a museum piece. It's like a time capsule here. Look, beautiful old pot survived. And here it is brand new. And a lovely little piece of history. Many remember. And it was not only used for washing clothes, but also, for example, for canning jars. Do you still have any nice ones?
These are the single arm shock absorbers. You have them here. Here is a piston inside. Then you have a bypass channel here. And when one is compressed here, it pushed all the oil through, and then it slowly went back. There was a spring inside, and then you open these two screws here. Then you could pull out the piston, put a new O-ring on, put it back in, done.
Sustainable, so to speak.
Then you placed it like this, poured in the oil, pressed down twice to pump it full, and then put the screw back on. Here is a small silent bushing inside. A lot of improvisation was done afterwards, of course. Here is the oil filler screw. These silent bushings, they were mostly standard bushings. They fit everywhere, even later with the GDR stuff.
So, and that was the ignition key.
Yes, that was intended for two things. First, for cranking, and second, for adjusting the ignition and setting the valves. Now watch. Now it's working. Now you're already turning. When Grandma died, everything was supposed to go in the trash, but I thought it was too valuable and brought it here. Now it's been sitting here for 15 years. Yes, that was the first color TV from GDR times, and Grandma and Grandpa didn't indulge in anything else. No trips to Spain. They couldn't anyway. And at home, they always set everything up very nicely, and whatever was available, whether kitchen machines or washing machines, they were always ahead. And this was the first color TV that ran here in the village. Don't know if it looks like a big oven. Cost 5,000. East German mark. 5,000.
When are they coming?
I think it was probably the 60s or maybe the 70s. So when exactly was it? The 60s here in Stassfurt. With 1,000 buttons even back then. All fine adjustments and so on, which the others didn't have at all. There it was, just on, and either a picture or no picture at all. Okay, so I thought about what it says there. So NFDC color 21/1 Stassfurt. And here, surely the receipt or packing slip. It could also take a few minutes, about 5 to 10 minutes, for all the tubes to warm up, you know. Then it wouldn't need a heater.
Then you come right away with the TV. That's why there are the big slots here, or huge heat dissipation is made.
Yes, yes, all ventilation slots here. Cold air enters and warm air exits above. Yes, but what is considered... I still remember how my mother told me that was a day off. Then he sat by the window and always listened to the radio. It was up here on a console, an old belt buckle radio. And then whenever there was carnival in Cologne, she would think of me, wishing I could see it. 2001. It must look beautiful. If only one could see it. And then there was the first color TV. I believe it was a Rubens. They brought it from Berlin, such a large picture tube. Now you can even see it. A few years later, it was also possible if you could see it in color.
We were the first. The first one was in the pub, and we were able to save it. Then we'll make another film about it. Use and that was an event. Everyone from the village gathered there and watched the TV.
There was also a console in the corner upstairs, and rows of chairs like in a cinema were set up. And if you were well behaved as a child, you were allowed to join and then watch Wedding in the Courtyard and all those shows. Yes, and then here is the color TV. Yes, and then the happiness was actually complete. And now he already has a color TV everywhere. But you already know color TVs. That was really something special. Yes, now one can say that the thing cost 5,000 East German marks. But bread cost 90 East German marks, and children's clothes were also cheap. And school books were free, but you had to pay for luxury in the GDR.
Nowadays it's also a big purchase, like back then. Yes. It's similar to how cinemas and kids' shows cost a lot of money.
Yes, if you buy the latest model today.
I don't know what you also get for 4,000 today. If you buy a really good big one,
$3,000 are East German marks. Yes, there's no need to argue about it. It's just astonishing what one has gone through. The whole development in many areas is not even known today, and it's still top. It's still top. Where are the brooms? You all still have hair.
how heavy they are. Look here, they fit perfectly.
Look, and in all directions, push like this, push like this, push like this, back, forward, done. Yes, think about it. He managed to get the ball in just before the ground came up to meet him, ensuring a successful play. But how practical it is made. Yes, art in all directions. Today they make a big fuss about being able to get under the chair, under the table with a vacuum cleaner.
It's really quite heavy, so the most important thing is that you don't have to press so hard.
Apply brawn floor wax. Wait for 15 minutes, and then go over it until it shines.